Hey there everyone, let's talk some baseball for Friday, May 27th. And more specifically, if you have a copy of the MLB algorithm or you're interested in purchasing a 7-day subscription where you get an email from me every day with this Excel file, you have this file and it's almost game time here on Friday night for all of the games. All of the games are starting later, at least 6:40, almost an hour from now. So how do you take the file that I emailed you this morning and get it current? Because a bunch of new lineups are now confirmed. That's what this green means here, a confirmed lineup. You can see that down at the bottom, for example, Houston's lineup is still expected, Pittsburgh is still expected, but a lot of these are confirmed. So what do? Well, first thing you do is you go to the odds sheet and you bring in the new current odds. I mean, I've shown how to do that in previous videos. It's pretty easy. It's under the sports betting tab. Right here under baseball. I already did that, so we won't waste our time doing that. Then you go to fantasy lineups, daily lineups. Brings you right here. Gives you all the games in order. What you're going to do is, in Google Chrome it works in most browsers as well, I believe. Control A and Control C. So you just highlight it all and then copy that. Now we have to paste it right here in column L of the lineup sheet. So usually I'll clear this out by pressing the delete button. You do not want to you don't do this. Don't delete the column. It's going to break stuff. But just clear the contents of the cells. And then you're going to paste all that stuff we just copied from over in Google Chrome on the lineup sheet. You're going to press match destination formatting and it's going to appear. It's also going to adjust the things that are in this area, which is a pivot table right here in this blue area. So you need to right click anywhere inside of here and choose refresh. Once you do that, all the lineups and names and everything just changed. And one thing you can do is you can check to see if any errors pop up. There'll be a error. There aren't, like at this NA will pop up next to a name if there's an error. There aren't any. Okay, so that's good. Next thing you do is you go over to the batting order pivot. This is a pivot table of every team in their batting order. You right click and refresh in here and you make sure there aren't any holes, any white holes anywhere, which means we'd be missing a player's information. We are not, and there's one player per spot, so everything looks good. This is about as good as we can get it, and you can open up and see who the players are and what they're scoring and where they're batting in the order, and it's fun to do that if you're doing fantasy or something like that. So now that you've done those two things, you're going to go look at the matchup sheet now, and there are 14 games listed here. There are 14 games listed in the odds, so that matches. Next thing you need to do is check this lineup factor column and make sure that there isn't a double red zero here. There isn't. That would happen if somebody's name was incorrect. Let's add a name here, Ashcrafter or something. If we do that, you'll see that in the matchup sheet, this game all of a sudden has a lineup factor because this pitcher's name is not correct. So that's why we have to check to make sure there aren't any zeros there. I'm going to undo that name. And everything should be fine. Yep. So everything's fine. So everything looks good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the pivot sheet. And we're going to now refresh. So we had a list of this previously in order before the confirmed lineups came in for those games that are confirmed. After that, let's hide this for now. We're going to refresh. Things changed slightly. You can see that San Francisco dropped to the 4th. Boston moved up a little bit. Minnesota dropped down 1. San Diego moved up a little. Colorado moved up a little. Cleveland didn't move much. Not a lot of movement other than Tampa Bay went down. St. Louis about the same. Toronto. Who's Toronto playing? Right there. Okay, so not much moved actually. So that's pretty good. I guess you don't really want things to move all that much because then you wouldn't have a good idea of what the picks were before the lineups are announced. But lineups do matter, and that's why you should update this because it will prove more determinant. So now that you have this and you're just like, all right, well, what do I bet? Algorithm, tell me what to bet. Algorithm says games above 10% generally win. Those are all favorites. And the ones down here at 10% are at awful lines of minus 220. So these three are more bettable, and there's also a huge differential between Houston and Seattle. If there's one pick of one team to win on for the day, it's Houston. Says they cover also. So the minus 1.5 line is going to pay better, and it says that they do that. So that is where if you have one pick of the day, it's Houston to win And if you insist on getting paid, but you're not going to win every day, then it's Houston minus 1.5 at probably close to even money. So that's what it says for the one pick. It also says that the 3-team parlay, or the 3 top picks to focus on, I mean, there's a huge disparity actually in margin between this one and this one. You can see this is a huge differential game right here. So take that for what it's worth. Everything else is kind of chunked together. And there's only 2 underdogs at the bottom. So a quick synopsis of what this says is that there aren't that many great games and great lines to pick. A lot of things are in line with the algorithm. Thinks these top 5 teams win, but it doesn't pay very well. So tough there. Now let's look game by game as fast as we can. I don't want to harp on it forever, but here we only have 4 innings pitched for a pitcher. Is there any way he had pitching stats last year? He didn't. He was in AAA though, and he pitched well. Okay, that's something to know about that. This is a Cincinnati pitcher, but going up against a good San Francisco team. So if he pitches like AAA with better stats, then you have a closer game that San Francisco wins. Not worth the line. Watch them move on this list now. They're right here. Watch what happens. I just changed the pitching stats. They dropped all the way to down here. So, I mean, fascinating stuff that it's really saying Cincinnati plus 1.5 if this guy pitches AAA okay and not like this year. Which also, well, his ERA is at 4, but he's only got 4 innings pitched, so he might have got hit early. It's a tough call. It's really saying stay away. It's telling you San Francisco is not worth that line unless they hit the AAA pitcher hard. All right, let's keep going because I will talk forever. Colorado, Washington, lots of runs. Colorado's stats are a little inflated because they play in Colorado half the time, but it doesn't matter because Washington's ERA is ridiculous also. So these teams let up a lot of runs, so how can you not do an over? Well, the odds makers figured it out after I called it in yesterday's video, so today they'd set this thing up at 9.5, and it's predicting 10.1, but Colorado's a little inflated, so that's actually the appropriate over-under, and it's not as bettable today as it was yesterday. Colorado's team runs might be bettable because Washington's bullpen is bad, and look at how bad Aaron Sanchez's ERA is this year. So looking at team runs is something I'd focus on more than the total over in this game. Baltimore and Boston. Here you've got a huge favorite for Boston. This is where you kind of can't really play the minus 1.5 at home, but they have been hitting. ERA for Kyle Bradish, not great. Lineup factor really good for Boston. Says they put up over 6 runs, says they win. So team over for Boston. And Boston to win, you're really stretching it with Boston minus 1.5 because it does give Baltimore credit for at least 3 runs. And winning at home minus more than, laying the 1.5 at home is tough because of the way you try to win a game, and sometimes you just win it by 1 run. So that's a line where I take Boston on the money line. That's probably what I'll do rather than messing with Boston minus 1.5. If Boston has a good hitting day, then you get a piece of that by betting Boston's team runs as well. So I'll probably do both those 2 things in that game. Yankees and Tampa Bay. Here, it favors Tampa Bay today because Jeffrey Springs is really pitching well. So is Jameson Talon, though. Fascinating. Super low-scoring game here. Over-under set at 7 makes it difficult to play. But man, predicts only 5 runs in this game, and both teams. And notice the lineup factors are not that great. Like the lineup factors in the Baltimore-Boston game or Colorado-Washington game, better than this game. So a lot of consistency that the under is the play. Under 7s, I mean, it's not a high number. It's tough. That's just tough. And who's going to win that game? It says Tampa Bay barely. Simply because Jeffrey Springs, who has fewer innings pitched, very tough game right there. It is the 10th pick of the day for a reason. It's way down on that list. Could go either way. Philadelphia and the Mets. Likes the Mets. Carrasco is 4-1. Thinks the Mets win this game by just barely 1.5. So it says the money line at home is the play, even though it's not great. They're the 6th pick of the day, though. The margin's close to 10, and they are at home. So line not great, but it would say Mets at home, and it doesn't necessarily know about runs here because both these pitchers are pitching okay, but the lineup factors are very strong, so you can almost predict a little more runs than this depending on the weather. Shane Bieber and Alex Fado, Cleveland, Detroit, extremely close game. Says Cleveland is barely worth the line. Why? I mean, Shane Bieber's not pitching well this year for the Guardians. Detroit pulled off a win yesterday. Their lineup factor is very weak, and they don't score a lot of runs per game. So I guess if they win this game, they win a low-scoring game. If Cleveland can put up some runs and hit it all with this lineup factor, then they could win. So toss-up game, but it looks like Detroit and the under go together and Cleveland and the over go together if you're going to go either way on that game. Miami and Atlanta. Likes Atlanta, minus 140. Trevor Rogers not pitching well this year on a Miami team that I feel like hasn't been playing all that bad. Recently, not so much. Lineup factor favors Atlanta. Bullpen ERA for Atlanta suspect, though. It's given this game credit for, look at that. The over-under's 9. Darn. Gives them 8.6 runs. Thinks Atlanta wins this game, so Atlanta's the money line play at home. But once again, not good lines. Vegas is right. The odds makers are right in line with what's going on here. Here you've got Minnesota with Bailey Ober pitching well. Brad Keller not pitching terribly, but his record is poor because Kansas City cannot seem to put up runs much. And their bullpen's trouble. So it's giving you a 5-3-ish type game because Minnesota blew one yesterday with bases loaded a couple times, I think, late in the game. It's actually kind of a reasonable. It's a better line for Minnesota today. So that's the play because it's right there at that 10% margin. So you can see that the Minnesota minus 175, a better money line pick than San Francisco minus 220 because of these question marks pitching. That's what you can gauge from reading the algorithm like this, understanding what's contributing because ERA is better, bullpen ERA is better, and lineup factor is better, all for Minnesota, only at minus 175 if you think about it that way. So that's got to be a money line play. Milwaukee and St. Louis. St. Louis barely no margin game. ERAs are suspect here with these guys. Lineup factors are okay. Over-under set at 7. See how this is saying 7.8? And imagine a fight that goes at least 3-3 and probably 4-4. So you hit over 7.5 even. So an alternate over of 7.5 is interesting here given this ERA of 4.6 and this bullpen factor that's not that great. And some lineup factors that are over 4 on both teams. So I would expect over 7 in that game as the algorithm predicts barely. Probably clears it by a couple runs. Toronto and LA. Barely Toronto. Well, at least we're not favoring the Angels again. Chase Sislet only has 10 innings pitched, but they're very good. He didn't pitch last year, and he doesn't have AAA. Yeah, so suspect pitching matchup makes it more difficult down here. There's almost no margin on the game. It says Toronto in a pick'em fashion because Alex Manoah is pitching really well. And Angels lost one to him last night. Toronto playing a little better. So it's probably Toronto there, but it's really close. Dodgers in Arizona. Dodgers put up 1 million runs last night because I said they wouldn't cover. That's what happens when I talk trash to LA. They answer me by putting up like 12 runs. Now you have Madison Bumgarner going at 2-2 with a good ERA. So it's saying that they slow down the Dodgers' runs production. Ryan Pepitot, I don't know if we have any other stats. We have AAA stats, and his ERA was a 7. So here's what's cool about this game, is it's predicting only 6.4 runs, and they're saying over-under of 10. Dodgers just put up a ton, but Baumgartner's better this year. Pepitot has had better results in his first 7 innings and maybe fighting more, so this is probably more accurate, and look how much lower it is than 10. So taking minus 10 it gives you 3 runs plus of clearance, supposedly, and even if he pitches like AAA, you still barely clear it. That's only 8.3. So it's the under 10 there because of the weirdness of last night and people wanting to bet Dodger runs, and it's not supposed to happen, apparently, according to the algorithm. Here's the number 1 pick of the day in Houston and Seattle. It just says Verlander is very, very difficult to deal with. Seattle team that's lineup factor is only at 3.5. This is probably not confirmed lineups yet, but flexing having a bad run. So only minus 194, actually. I mean, to win for sure, and it says take the minus 1.5 because it can't even come up with a positive run prediction for Seattle given the disparity here. So Houston is the number one pick of the day, and somehow not even worse than minus 200 if these lines are correct. Pittsburgh and San Diego. Barely San Diego. Barely 4-4-ish when you round that game. Quintana's ERA is okay. Pittsburgh ripe for an upset here, so that's less than a run between them. What about last year's stats here? Oh, wow. Whoa. Because Sean Manaea was so much better last year and Quintana was so much worse. Interesting. So is Quintana going to pitch okay? That's what determines whether or not Pittsburgh covers 1.5. The lineup factor is bad for Pittsburgh and the ERA factor is bad. I can see why this game is minus 220 for San Diego, actually, but you can see that there's a scenario where that doesn't happen this way. I'm too scared to bet Pittsburgh minus 1.5 because of what happens when we switch the stats to last year and how lopsided it was. So we'll let that game go, but not take in San Diego either because there's an outcome that the algorithm predicts that could happen that doesn't have San Diego run away with that game. Texas and Oakland, it says Oakland 5-3. It says some ERAs here for John Gray. Texas wins the game 4-1 yesterday, almost exactly in line with the algorithm's predictions. This one says Oakland, and they're plus 112. So here you have an underdog. You got bad bullpens for both of these teams. The over is only 7.5 here. It's one to put in. This is almost a 4-4 game. 4-3, maybe on the road. Texas gets one more at bat. So you can probably clear 7, especially, or to push or clear 7. And Oakland at an underdog line is just, this is going to win about half the time. So when you get it at plus 112, you win money overall on straight bets in that situation. By taking it one day when they win and one day when they lose, you end up with 12 cents on your $2 bet in profit. So you can look at it that way, but it's not a great pick. So in summary, what are we doing today? We have to try Houston minus 1.5 and also take Houston to win because they're just so far up here. I don't know about Houston runs necessarily so much because runs can happen anytime, but they're really supposed to win this game. Boston, not a great line, but it was on there. Colorado team runs, that's what I said there. And also it says Colorado to win. I shouldn't knock it at minus 104. It's this high up on the list. It said stay away from this because of that weird pitching scenario. I said Minnesota money line's a good line. It said, I can't remember what it said about the Mets. I can't remember what it said here either. I think an over, right? There's supposed to be an over in that game. It said this game goes under 10, right? The rest of the stuff, it said take the Oakland if you're doing a straight bet. And I don't, oh yeah, there were supposed to be runs in the St. Louis-Milwaukee game, right? That was the other one for the over? Yeah, because it's set at 7 in these ERAs. So I think the big round robin I'm going to do is going to be Houston to win, Boston to, I almost want to do Boston team runs. I'd probably, let's say Boston to win because you should be picking winners. Colorado team runs is a better pick than the over, but don't ever listen to me. Minnesota to win. An over in this game. Oakland, but not on a round robin. That's a bad idea. Anyway, I'll talk forever, so I'll stop talking. Good luck, everybody. May all your picks be winning, and if you want to copy the algorithm, follow the links, go to kenbraverman.com, get it, and start messing with this yourself until your heart's content. All right, good luck. Bye.